Wanted to record a quick video, and I will try to keep it quick, to talk about thesis and outline revisions. Quite a few people are going to want to revise their thesis and outlines and try to not only get back some points on that assignment, but more importantly, to get a stronger foundation for their paper moving forward. And I did have some of these conversations about revision with a number of people in Sidebar on Thursday after some of the classes had gotten their feedback. And in reflecting on those conversations, it really felt to me, looking back, that 9 times out of 10, I was having the same conversation over and over again. And it's a conversation related to things that we've gone over and talked about in class, but that are complex habits of mind and complex habits in research that are just hard to master. And so it bears repeating. And so I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on people who needed to go through this again with me. But what I want to do here is kind of go through it again on this video, because of course we're not going to get to meet one-on-one for the next couple of days, and yet I do want you working as conscientiously as possible on getting your thesis and outline and your annotated bib too really settled and in a good place so that we can focus forward on drafting the paper. And so that's going to be especially important, because if you wait around to talk to me to start trying to revise your thesis and outline, some of you could be waiting a little while on that, because unfortunately next week office hours and Sidebar time are going to be limited because I'm going to be tied up with some testing. So I hope that this video then is going to be helpful to get some of you started. And again, this is stuff we've talked about before, but it's tricky. So let's look at a thesis here on the screen. And I saw quite a few things like this in reviewing thesis statements in the different classes I was grading today. So here we have one about the yellow wallpaper, a story many of you read. And it says, through experiences and the author's style, the yellow wallpaper argues against oppression of women. Okay, so you can see that this thesis is trying to use that template I gave you. Through text features, a certain effect is created. However, it's just not quite landing yet. So for example, it says through experiences. Well, that's experiences, that's not really a text feature, so it's not really clear what they mean by that. An author's style is certainly a text feature, but it's very broad and could include a lot of different things, so that could be more specific. And here when it comes to the effect, it's just talking about the oppression of women. Well, what is it saying about it? Can we be more specific on the theme there? So this thesis is in need of some revision. Now, to do that, to improve this thesis, I really think the recipe is, and you won't be surprised at all that I'm beating this drum beat again, databases, databases, databases. The whole point of this class is to get you better at synthesizing ideas and information from research into your own thinking. And that's what we need to do here, is we need to borrow some ideas and stitch them together to make this a stronger thesis. So if I don't have those in my annotated bib, then it's time to go looking again. And again, for 9 out of 10 of you, I really think the best place to look is right here in the Gale Literature Criticism. I've been finding that again and again as I've been helping folks with the research. I think this is the best one for us. Now, obviously, some people have topics that are a little tougher to find in here, might need to go into JSTOR, but like I said, 9 out of 10, this is where you want to be. So here in the Gale database for literature criticism, I searched for the yellow wallpaper and I got 248 hits. That's a little higher than average because this is a story that's written about quite a bit. And you can see that right at the top, I'm not getting a lot of just super generic, super general overview hits. Now, some of you will. For a lot of these texts, the first several hits will be just overviews. And there are sources like that. Like if I come down here, I've got this one here. It says Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, a Centenary. So it's just 100 years looking back at this text. So it's going to be pretty general, pretty broad. We also have Gilman's own essay about why she wrote The Yellow Wallpaper, which, is just explaining the most obvious historical context for the text. So, I mean, these might be decent sources. You might get a couple of lines out of these. I know you'd think it's tempting. Oh, well, she wrote this about her own essay, her own story. Well, can I use that? Well, yeah, you can use it, but it's not terribly long. And it is written for, a popular audience to explain the basics of the story. So it's not super deep there. So what we want to be looking for, and I've said this many times, what we want to be looking for is sources that come at the text from a particular angle, a specific approach to the text, which is going to be more laser focused. And when it is narrower like that, that means they're going to cut deeper into the text in examining it. And so that's what we want to be doing in our story. So as I look through these, there's some that do that. Like here we have one that's obviously coming at it from an LGBTQ angle. Here we have one that's got a feminist perspective. So these are particular specific angles on the text, right? Marxist lenses, feminist lenses, representation lenses. We never went through that PowerPoint on these lenses, but we've talked about this as a metaphor throughout. Maybe some of you did check that PowerPoint out the very first weeks of school that's in the blackboard there. But now, do keep in mind that like right here on this one where it says a feminist perspective, we use the word feminism in a very broad way in popular culture. But when we're talking in scholarly terms, feminist perspective is a much more specific lens. And so this one struck me as one that, despite the title being kind of fuzzy, this description here told me I might want to check this one out. So I opened this one up and looked at it. And scrolling down and looking through some others, and again, it's skimming. I'm skimming these titles, I'm skimming these descriptions. Skimming is a researcher's best friend early on. Then I have to go read it. I've got to go read it later, but skimming can help me find the ones that'll help me. And I hit on this one that sounds really interesting to me. Environment as psychopathological symbolism in the yellow wallpaper. Okay, so symbolism is an obvious text feature, right? But there's nothing obvious about the approach to symbolism here. It's like environment as psychopathological symbolism. So again, this is a very particular angle on the text that I can use. So using these two that I just indicated as an example, let's look at what some ideas I could steal out of those and then put in my thesis might be. So, let me go to the other one. So like right here, I found this interesting line about the bed. The bedstead is a symbol of the narrator's situation. A representation of her sexuality is nailed to the floor. Okay. So this thing that represents her sexuality is nailed in place. Okay, wow, there's a lot we can do with that, right? So that's going to be an interesting symbol I could play around with in my essay. And then this other point that I thought was really interesting is the way it's talking about the fact that there's a relationship between the ordinary domestic world of women and the Gothic horrors that represented it. So this connection between like ordinary domestic life for women and Gothic horror in the yellow wallpaper, that's an interesting connection. So taking these two ideas, I can go back to my thesis and I can blend those in and make it a lot more sophisticated. So here I was talking about experiences and style, and I was really fuzzy on what I wanted to focus on. But now I've looked at the databases and I came away with some much more specific ideas, and that got me rolling. So I'm going to borrow that symbolism, but I'm also going to think about some other imagery in the story. And notice I'm not just saying through symbolism and imagery. I'm going to be more specific here. What kind of symbolism and imagery? Well, the ones I'm going to focus on all have to do with this idea of confinement and restraint, because we saw how the bed is nailed in place, but she's also locked inside a room. So this one idea that I took out of a source got me thinking about a somewhat broader but still very specific other elements that I could bring in to the story. So now I have through symbolism of imagery and through symbolism and imagery of confinement and restraint, the yellow wallpaper, and then I can get more specific because of my thinking of this other source also, portrays the domestic world as a Gothic nightmare leading to severe psychopathology. So I took that connection about the domestic world being a Gothic nightmare, but then I connected it back to that other source that was about the psychopathological symbolism. So see how I'm stitching ideas from multiple sources together to make my thesis much more specific and richer. That's the process that I'm talking about to revise and improve your thesis. Is you got to go and look for those sources that give you new ways to think about your text and borrow some of those ideas to put together a stronger thesis. So like I said, that's something that I ended up going through with a lot of folks in my conversations on Thursday, and so I thought I would record this video stepping you through it here so that hopefully you would have time to go and begin putting together a newer version of your thesis. Now, we still can meet, of course, whenever possible. I will try to make myself available Monday after school for office hours so that you guys can get some more help if that's a good time for you. But since we've got this testing coming up, it's going to be a little bit more limited. Office hours on Tuesday, unfortunately, are going to be canceled because I'll be getting ready for that test. So it's really best if try to move forward with the revision on your own, using this as a guide, using everything we've done as a guide, and just shoot me emails if you need more help, and we'll talk as soon as we can if you need to. But it's already longer than I'd intended it to be, this video, so I hope that is helpful, and I hope you guys have a good 3-day weekend, and we'll see you back in class.